All right, let's get right into it. Today we're talking about a figure who is just absolutely foundational to the entire story of Russia, Prince Ivan I of Moscow. And get this, he's the guy who took this small, overlooked town and started it on the path to becoming the center of a massive empire, all without fighting a single major battle.
But here's the funny thing. Almost no one calls him Ivan I. History knows him by his nickname, Ivan Kalita. And Kalita literally means money bag. Now, there are a couple of stories about this. The nice version, he was incredibly generous, always carrying a purse stuffed with coins for the poor. The less flattering version, it was a nod to his legendary wealth and his skill at, well, collecting it.
And that really gets to the heart of our question for today. In an age of famous warriors and brutal conquests, how on earth did a prince nicknamed Moneybag use his cash, his cleverness, and his diplomacy to outplay everyone and build the foundation for what would become Russia? It's a fascinating story. Let's dig in.
Okay, so first, we gotta set the scene. The early 14th century. This is not the unified Russia you might be picturing. It's more like a chaotic patchwork of little principalities all bickering and fighting with each other. And looming over all of them was a much, much bigger power, the Mongol Golden Horde.
And this is where the political game gets really intense. You see, the top job, the title of Grand Prince, wasn't something you won on the battlefield. Nope, it was a gift granted by the Mongol Khan himself. So what did this create? A vicious competition where all the Russian princes were fighting each other, trying to become the Khan's favorite. This whole situation basically led to two competing strategies, perfectly embodied by the two main rivals, Tver and Moscow. The princes of Tver chose defiance. Their plan was to push back, to rebel against the Mongols. But Moscow, and specifically our guy Ivan, chose the polar opposite path. Total, absolute cooperation. Two cities, two completely different game plans, and both were a huge gamble.
And this is where Ivan Kalita really starts to play his hand. Instead of fighting his overlords, he decides he's going to be their most useful, most indispensable servant. He essentially weaponized loyalty.
His big break comes in 1327, and it's a wild story. The people in that rival city, Tver, they rise up and kill the Khan's envoy. A massive mistake for Tver. But for Ivan, this was a golden opportunity. The Khan orders Ivan to lead a punitive army and crush the rebellion. Ivan doesn't hesitate for a second. He marches on his rival city and brutally sacks it. And his reward for this ruthless efficiency? By 1331, the Khan makes him the one and only Grand Prince.
You can really see his money bag plan taking shape here. It's pretty brilliant in its simplicity. Step 1, prove your absolute loyalty, even if it means crushing your own people. Step 2, cash in on that loyalty. The Khan gives him the exclusive right to collect all the tribute from the Russian lands. And Step 3, use that power to get incredibly wealthy, buying up land and influence from your now much poorer rivals.
But Ivan was playing the long game. He knew that money and political clout weren't enough. For Moscow to truly become the undisputed leader, it needed to be something more. It needed to be the spiritual heart of the Russian people. And that was his next masterstroke.
Ivan's genius move was to forge a really close personal friendship with Metropolitan Peter. This guy was the head of the entire Russian Orthodox Church. You got to remember, the church was one of the only things that actually united all these squabbling principalities. Getting its leader in your corner, a total game changer.
And watch how this plays out. Around 1325, Peter is convinced to move the center of the church to Ivan's tiny little town of Moscow. Ivan immediately starts building a magnificent stone cathedral. Then, after Peter dies and is buried in that cathedral, he's declared a saint. Just like that, Moscow isn't just a political hub anymore, it's a holy city, a pilgrimage destination. It has a saint buried right in its soil.
This quote from the historian Vasily Klushevsky just nails it. He points out that Moscow became the religious capital before it became the political one. And with the church came its immense wealth. Donations, land, resources, all of it started flowing directly to Ivan's city.
So let's tally the score. After all of this political maneuvering, tax collecting, and church building, what were the results? Well, this is where Ivan really starts gathering the lands.
And this is the money bag in action. Ivan wasn't conquering his neighbors with armies, he was literally just buying them. His own grandson's will credits him with purchasing the rights to rule entire principalities like Beluzero, Galich, and Uglich. He was building an empire with his treasury.
And what about his old arch-rival, Tver? The end was just brutal. In 1339, the Prince of Tver gets summoned to see the Khan, and he's executed. Just like that, the 35-year power struggle was over. Moscow had won. And while the records are a bit quiet on the details, many historians are pretty sure Ivan was whispering in the Khan's ear to make that happen.
But Ivan's single greatest achievement, the one thing that cemented his legacy, can be boiled down to a single number, recorded by the writers of the time: 40. 40 years.
What does that mean? The Trinity Chronicle tells us that after Ivan took charge, the constant, devastating Mongol raids, they stopped. For 40 years, the Russian lands experienced what they called the Great Peace. By being the perfect tax collector and serving the Khan, Ivan bought his people 4 decades of stability to recover and rebuild. It was a peace bought through collaboration, for sure, but it was peace.
And this brings us to his incredibly complicated legacy, something people still argue about today. On one side, you have historians like Karamzin who call him the gatherer of the Russian lands, the founding father of the state. On the other side, you've got thinkers like Karl Marx who saw him as nothing more than a collaborator, the Tartar's hangman, who built his power on the backs of his own people.
So we end right where we started with a question. Was Ivan Kalita a brilliant visionary who used the only tools he had to buy peace and build a nation? Or was he a ruthless pragmatist, a slave in chief, who built Moscow's greatness on the ruins of his rivals and by bowing to a foreign power? The answer, like the man himself, is probably somewhere in that messy, complicated middle.